where 6 young men, workers at this company that is behind me, were exposed to hydrogen sulfide. 3 of them will never work again. 3 of them have gone back to work. They were all exposed to extreme limits of hydrogen sulfide for extended periods of time.
But Hepburn says the environmental concerns go beyond the Southern District.
I got involved in this fight because the Grand Bahama Port Authority built a sewage plant in my backyard in 2001. And for 12 to 14 years, I've been struggling with this plant. There's been sewage on the ground. There's been constant spraying of sewage due to a malfunction at the plant of some kind, which has continued for years. I never used to have the flu before I moved to that residence. In fact, never had the flu until they built the sewage plant there. And since then, I started having the flu on a fairly regular basis. So I got involved in this fight as a result of first-hand experience of being poisoned by hydrogen sulfide gas and other chemicals that are affiliated with sewage plants. In fact, my good friend, who is no longer with us, he died in June of this year. His house was closest to the sewage plant. He got a simple flu, turned into bronchitis, pneumonia. He was hospitalized for a week or so, and then in bed for about 5 weeks. A total of 8 weeks after having the flu, the young man at the age of 56 was dead. Another neighbor around the same time contracted the flu as well. It turned into pneumonia. She was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Fortunately, she is still with us today and seemed to be well on her way to recovery.
Human rights activist Joe Darville, who is chairman of Save the Bays and president of Waterkeepers Bahamas, is standing with residents as they battle this age-old problem.
We were fortunate after a number of years to convince the Catholic Board to actually relocate Grand Bahama Catholic High School. And subsequent to that, I bargained with Edward St. George and Mr. Jack Haywood for all of the schools to be relocated from under the industrial complex. It took a number of years after Catholic High was relocated. But getting back to the actual impact, we had to suffer back in those days, as some of the people, the residents still do, a number of carcinogenic elements that emanate from these particular plants. And we don't need to go into the actual names, the scientific names of them, but there were about 10 of them, and we were able to smell probably about 5 or 6 of them. The others were undetectable by the human nostrils. But we know that whenever there's a rumor, or rather an odor, and even if you cannot detect it, it is transmitted as particles. And therefore the particles are charged with negative and positive. And so entering the nostrils and the respiratory areas of the human body, obviously they will cause damage because these things the body is not able to metabolize. And so it created within that area a large number of students who fell ill whenever the air was coming from that particular vicinity. And they ended up in the hospital many times. We had one situation, for example, at the Hawksbill Primary, where the principal called me on one particular morning because 35 of her students were suffering severely. They had actually, a number of them had passed out. I cry shame on, it's reprehensible, it's criminal that this situation has been allowed to go on and on and on for years, and the plea and the cries of those people not being heard. There is no way anyone should be residing in that area, right under the industrial complex. Neither should there be any schools in that area. Fortunately, with the bargaining with my board, the bargaining with the Port Authority, the bargaining with Edward St. George and Sir Jack, we were able to get Grand Bahama Catholic High School relocated out of there. And then subsequent to that, my pleading with Edward St. George and Sir Jack, finally all of the schools with the exception of Louis Primary was able to be removed from that area.
Darville recalls an incident where a former resident who was suffering from cancer reached out to him before she died.
One incident that absolutely broke my heart was, and I'm going to give her name here, Hartlin Cooper, one of our young, beautiful, intelligent young women. At the time when she was diagnosed with cancer, she was one of the managers. She was the manager at Burger King downtown. 2 months before she died, she called for me. She said, "Mr. Darville, please come to me and see me. I want to show you something." So I went to Hartlin's bedside, and she had all the documents from her doctor laid out in front of me. She said, "Read those, Mr. Darville." As I read through them, there was every indication there that she was dying, terminally ill from cancer, and unequivocally, without sort of contradiction, it was all related to industrial pollution that she gained from living in that area and going to school in that area. What more do we want?
He also recounted a conversation with the then chairman of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, the late Edward St. George, regarding the pollution in the Southern District.
Edward revealed to me something that really shocked the dickens out of me. He said, "Joe, I wish I had listened to you long time ago." He said recently, meaning about 2 or 3 months before he had died, they had sunk a number of wells in the area, Pinders Point, Lewis Yard, and the Hawksbill area. And he said, "Joe, you know that every one of those wells came up saturated with oil?"
Coming up, a local physician shares his involvement with a study of the industrial sector and its impact on neighboring communities.
Every well, like Mr. Darville said, were contaminated. Do you know people in Pinders Point, Lewis Yard? Do you know how much money sits under Borco? And I got this from reliable sources. $60 million worth of oil sitting under these communities. For you guys. So you guys need to not be afraid. I mean, I don't want to be a part of the committee because I know what happens when, and that's the reason why I got kicked out of Random Memorial Hospital too. So let's get this straight. So, but I'm not getting into politics. But there was another really bad smelling stuff called Mercaptine, METCAPTENE, and so you know it's Mercaptine that's helping you now, because what Mercaptine does, it's a good stuff, but it has a horrible smell. So what it does, they put it on.
Welcome back. Local physician Dr. Eric Brown says in 1986, the government sent him to Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health to study epidemiology. When he returned, he was sent to Grand Bahama to begin a study on the impact the industrial sector was having on surrounding communities.
In this study, there were several of us. My boss, who had just come from Pan American Health Organization in Switzerland. If you want to know his name, you might want to look him up. His name is Ahmed Mahmoud. He was the then chief of the Department of Public Health. There were only 2 problems that they had, you know. They were burning sulfur dioxide, which we found 400,000 times the amount in this community. 400,000 times. The amount of sulfur that's supposed to be in any community to be a community without any problems is 354 parts per million. We found 400,000. Now you can multiply that. Every well, like Mr. Darville said, were contaminated. Do you know people in Pinders Point, Lewis Yard? Do you know how much money sits under Borco? And I got this from reliable sources. $60 million worth of oil sitting under these communities. For you guys. So you guys need to not be afraid. But we found that the children were fainting because of two reasons. Because of the sulfur dioxide, which the body cannot metabolize at all, and the mercaptan, which is just a gaseous, stinking, nasty substance that all the kids were fainting from. Now, this is the way it happened. Every morning, I would drive down from that hill as you come down on Sunrise Highway, and I can tell you, from 2 o'clock in the morning until about 6 o'clock, there was a sot about 20 feet came down that you could hardly see through. And I had to do the study. I'm telling you what I found. I'm telling you what I reported. And nobody said anything after the report. I know what happened to the report because my boss was shipped out in 2 weeks. They told him to pack up and get out of the country in 2 weeks. So we know what happened then. I know for sure who got the money. I know who got the money, and it was $10 million. This is a part of my report that I wrote, and I'm going to stop after this because I just want you to listen to a part of what I wrote. Sulfur dioxide is a colorless reactive gas, an air pollutant with a pungent odor. The gas can be posing a threat to human health, animal health, and plant life. Sulfur dioxide irritates the skin, the nasal mucosa, the nose, the eyes, the throat, and the lungs. High concentration of sulfur dioxide can cause inflammation and irritation of the respiratory system, particularly during heavy physical activity. And that's why the kids were fainting, especially when they go and do physical education. This leaves you with chronic bronchitis, emphysema. You can look all these fancy things up, and it even affects you serious and give you serious nerve effect with levels of high sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere.
When we come back, residents are renewing their call to be relocated from what they say is a highly toxic environment. Welcome back. Residents of the Southern District have been agitating to be relocated for decades, and they're still appealing to the powers that be to intervene.
We have to do what is right now and show love, and especially from our government. Make a move now. Psalm 70 says, no more tarrying. There's no more time to tarry now. Take care of the people. The people need to live. Get out of this area. There's no time now to repair. It's time now to relocate the people.
The Saint, I talking with plenty years. The Saint was here like this. And there ain't nothing, every time we go over there, so we gotta go to government. Being the government, they even ain't doing nothing. So I don't know, I just forget about it.
We are advocating for a relocation of these communities by these industrial companies, and we are going to fight and keep at this until we get the results that we are aiming for. The people's lives are at stake, and the industrial companies are making billions of dollars and running away and leaving sick people here in the Bahamas.
Despite the fact that the Environmental Impact Assessment final report shows no evidence was found of harmful chemical exposure on a day-to-day basis in the Pinders Point and surrounding areas, residents say their communities remain under siege and their health and wellness are at risk. They are calling on government to act now.